In today's wood story, we are making cheese slicers that look like a slice of cheese. The best part is that we're going to be using the CNC for the majority of this project, which means you can batch a bunch of these in no time. So go grab your tools and let's start this wood story. To make the cheese slicer, you're going to need a wood that measures 8 inches by 5 inches. Now it is okay if the wood is longer, so feel free to make it as long as you like, but it is important that it ends up being 5 inches wide because otherwise the hardware is not going to fit in here. Similarly, you're also going to need a thickness that is at least 3/4 of an inch thick, but you can go up to 1 inch if you have some thicker stock in mind. But now let's move over to the CNC, get this file set up, and then get to work. We are now going to be looking at the actual file and how to set it up inside of your CNC program. I am using Carbide Create, and if you happen to have that same program, then you can just grab this file and then all of the pathways will be set up for you, making it super easy. But if you are using any other software, then what you'll end up with is this SVG file that you'll need to import into your software, and then you'll need to set up your own tool path. So there's just a few things that I want to go over in order to set you up for success as you're cutting this on your own CNC. And one of those things is we need to obviously cut the outside, but we also need to cut both the letters and this little string here, which is the one that's going to ensure that our hardware is going to be able to be set properly. If you do end up modifying the file, make sure that you do not modify where the entry point from this line is, because this also needs to be at exactly 3 inches in from the right hand side. Essentially, when we're adding the hardware, it's going to be right here in the upper right corner. So the distance from the right hand side to this groove here has to be 3 inches. That's very important. And the file is already properly set up. So the easiest thing will be just to obviously grab this file and then get going. That's going to set you up for success. But let's quickly look at the tool paths here that I've selected. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've decided that I'm going to do an engrave on the actual text. And that's because I'm planning on making a plug that's going to fit right into it afterwards in an opposite wood. If you're going to fill it with resin or if you're just going to leave it bare, then you don't need to make the plug, and you could also avoid actually making the V groove that I have decided to do. That is a personal preference. You can just cut it out normally, just a couple of millimeters down the wood. Again, remember, if you don't fill it with something, chances are it's going to be a little bit hard for the end user to clean it afterwards. And even though it's not a cutting board, if there's going to be cheese on it, you probably don't want something inside of it. So I would recommend either doing the plug or using resin to fill it after the fact. Once you've selected that, then it's really just a matter of making the fine tuning on the outside. And what I like to do is, I'm just going to activate these ones. I like to add a V groove all the way around, even on this little hole right here. And these little holes, they're meant to make it look like Swiss cheese, but they actually have a second purpose. It's the perfect area for you to hold your hand when you are chopping this cheese, like when you're slicing it. So it's both ergonomic and it's fun in terms of the design. And then the string cutout, this is where I want to just draw your attention really quickly. So I'm going to enable this one and go into it. So right now I have the thickness set at 3/4 of an inch, which is just about 20 mils. And right now I have my depth that's going down to 11. So just a hair further down than half. That's all you need to do. So again, if you're doing 3/4 of an inch, just do half of that. I like to do mine in millimeters. So this is going to be 11 millimeters for me. But again, this is pending on your wood thickness. So that's the one thing that you really have to double check that you got right. And if for whatever reason, if you mess up, you could bring it over on the table saw afterwards and then just increase the groove, but you can't decrease it. So getting it right the first time will just help and save you some frustration. And then the final thing is just cutting out the outside. So I'm just going to enable that, and then I'll show you what the simulation of this one looks like. And there we have it. And there's some tabs here too to make sure that it's not going to go flying when you're doing it. So now let's go over in the CNC and actually cut it. And if you decide to also do the plug, then I am going to leave the plug settings down in the description, but I'm not going to go over that in details in this video. But I will make sure that you have the settings for Carbide Create so that you can cut the plug as well. But if you are using a different software, you're going to have to do the plug settings based on your software. Now, let's get over and get cutting. The CNC is able to do most of the work for making this nice cheese slicer, but there is still one step that you need to do with a drill. And a word of a warning, most drills are not going to be long enough for you to actually be able to add your hardware. So I do recommend picking up one of these extra long drills. This one is super long. You definitely don't need that. But this one right here is too short. So I'll leave a link below on the one that I recommend that you actually get, and that's gonna be a happy medium between these two. If you are in a pinch, and if you do have one of these that are just a little bit longer, like this one is 4 inches, and that is with the little collar here, you can kind of make it work. The last little step gets a little sketchy when it comes to the drill because you're gonna have to like keep your drill all the way in here, but it is possible. So if you're in a pinch, if you only need to make one, you can get away with it, but this one's gonna make your life a lot easier. So this is the hardware that we're gonna be using. This one you can pick up online. I will leave a link for that below as well. But essentially the kit consists of a couple of different parts. It consists of the actual cheese slicer, which will end up sitting on the inside like this. And then this part has to go inside and actually catch this little groove right here. And then finally, once that's all done, you have to connect it up here and tension it. So when it's done, it's gonna be something like this. But that's why it also becomes really important that you have the right drill bit and the right angle, because if it's kind of sloppy like this, you're not gonna be able to get your wire all straight. So that's a really important thing. So what you wanna do is, you wanna take your board and you wanna mark it 1/2 inch in from the end, because that's the center of our drill. So we are going to be marking that. So I'm gonna start by marking that right here. So 1/2 inch in. And then we're also going to be marking the middle. So what I like to do is, I see that it's right here, and then move it around, and that's the middle right here, which tells me that the middle is right here between those two parts. So that is my exact middle, and this is 1/2 inch in. So this is where we want our drill to be drilled in from. Very important. Now, the easiest thing to do is if you have some sort of a drill guide. Either one of these ones, this is a Jessam. I don't recommend getting this one. This is gonna be way too expensive for this. I just happen to have it. But you can also get simpler versions of this on Amazon. You could also do it over on the drill table, but you're gonna need a fence because it needs to be standing up pretty high, because otherwise it's gonna be wobbling all over the place. But essentially what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna take this and I am going to line it up with this hole right here. And then I'm gonna clamp it and I'm gonna drill it. And that's gonna ensure that when I start this off, it's gonna go in absolutely straight. Now, I'm not gonna be able to use this the whole way, at least not if I'm using this one, but I did pick up that long bit, so I will be able to use this all the way through. And then essentially what we wanna do is, we wanna just go a hair beyond this groove that we've cut right here, because it needs to go all the way through so that this little string here, once it's connected, is fully secure. Because if it only went right here, then this could just pop out at any second. So what you want to do is drill it, and then once we've done that, then we'll connect it and fine tune it. So let's do that now. All right, that looks pretty decent.
I recommend doing a test with your hardware at this point before adding the finish, because if the hardware is too tight, you may need to drill the hole a bit more back and forth to make it swirl without too much force.
Okay, so once you've ensured that it actually fits and that it lines up nicely, don't screw it together yet, but this is just a test. Then you can proceed with the finishing. Now in my case, I decided to make this a plug, so I'm gonna put this together, I'm gonna glue it, and then I'll finish it off tomorrow. But if you just carved out the letters, then that's perfect. You can either put resin in it or just leave it as it is. Now, the only thing is, if you are doing an engraving with letters such as this one, just remember it is just still a food product. Even though you're not technically cutting on it, it would be hard to clean cheese out of this. So I would probably recommend that you put some resin in here, just because that's gonna make it straight again. Or you can do the inlay like I did.
I left my plug to dry overnight before sanding away the excess the next day. And if you're using resin, you're probably going to need a day or two to let that dry fully as well. But after that, it's just a matter of sanding it to 220 and then applying your favorite food-safe oil. And I am of course using walrus oil because it's my favorite. But I recently had a comment that made me laugh, because one of my viewers thought that I was using oil made from animals, which of course would be absolutely awful. But I am happy to let you know that walrus oil contains 0 products from animals. In fact, it only contains beeswax, coconut oil, mineral oil, and vitamin E. To add the hardware, start by adding in the longest part of the handle hardware into the hole that we made. That is the opposite one of the one that has the little screw hole. And once you reach the vertical groove, then place the wire hoop from the wire hardware and make sure that it catches onto the hardware handle before pushing the handle fully through. Then you can snap the string onto the tension handle and then finish it by securing the screw that it came with. And that's it. Easy cheesy. And with that done, this cheese slicer was ready to be used with your favorite soft cheese, such as this lovely Gouda cheese. Let me know what cheese you plan to use this cutter for. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more great videos, and I'll see you soon in the next Wood Story.